Nobody sat you down and told you. There was no conversation, no announcement, no moment where someone looked at you and said, "From today, things are different." You just noticed one day that someone had to hold things together, and you looked around, and you realized that someone was going to be you. You were still a child, but something in you quietly decided that childhood was a luxury you could not afford. Psychology has a name for what happened to you, and understanding it might be the most important thing you do today. Not because it will change what happened, but because it will finally explain why you are the way you are, and why that is not a flaw. Stay with me. The first thing psychology wants you to understand is that what happened to you had a name long before you had words for it. Psychologists call it parentification. It happens when a child is placed, consciously or not, in the role of the emotionally responsible one, the one who manages the mood of the room, the one who senses when something is about to go wrong and quietly tries to prevent it, the one who takes care of others before anyone thinks to ask how they are doing. And here is what parentification does to a developing brain. It teaches the nervous system to suppress its own needs in order to stay functional. Not because the child chose this, but because the environment required it. The brain adapted, and what looked like maturity from the outside was actually something far more complicated. A child learning to prioritize everyone else's emotional reality above their own, simply to feel safe. They were not born strong. They became strong because the alternative felt too dangerous, but the strength came at a cost that nobody counted. Because here is what happens when a child learns to need nothing. They grow into an adult who genuinely does not know how to receive. Someone offers help and something in them tightens. Someone offers care and it feels suspicious rather than comforting. Someone tells them to rest and they feel the specific discomfort of a person who has been taught at a cellular level that stillness is not safe. Developmental psychology has documented this pattern clearly. Children who grow up without consistent emotional support develop what researchers call premature self-reliance. Not the confident independence of someone who chose to stand alone, but the careful self-sufficiency of someone who learned that asking for help was either pointless or dangerous. They stop asking. They stop expecting. They handle everything alone even when they are drowning. And as adults, they appear composed and capable while internally carrying something that was never supposed to be theirs to carry. Here is something that psychology says almost never gets acknowledged. When emotional development is rushed, it does not develop evenly. Parts of a person mature too early, the wisdom, the responsibility, the ability to read a room in seconds. But other parts remain unfinished, untouched, quietly waiting for a safety that never arrived. This is what psychologists call split maturity, and it explains something that many people who grew up too fast find deeply confusing about themselves. They can handle a crisis without flinching, but they fall apart at small kindnesses. They are extraordinary under pressure, but do not know what to do when everything is fine. They give advice that changes people's lives, but cannot ask for a glass of water without feeling like a burden. This is not inconsistency. This is the map of what was interrupted. And then there is the relationship with rest. People who grew up too fast do not know how to do nothing. Not because they are workaholics, but because their nervous system learned something specific about calm. It learned that calm was temporary, that when things went quiet, something was usually about to go wrong. And so the nervous system stayed alert, always scanning, always slightly braced, always ready for the moment the peace would end. Psychology calls this chronic stress adaptation, and it means that rest, the thing a person needs most, becomes the thing that feels most threatening. They feel useful only when they are needed. They feel safe only when they are busy. And they feel vaguely guilty anytime they simply exist without producing something. And underneath all of this, underneath the self-reliance and the split maturity and the inability to rest, there is a belief so quiet that most people who carry it have never said it out loud. If someone is taking care of me, I am burdening them. Research consistently shows that early responsibility creates this pattern, an internalized belief that their needs are too much, that depending on someone means taking something from them, that the right thing to do is always to need less. So they apologize for wanting support. They minimize their pain. They feel guilty for receiving. And care, when it finally arrives, does not feel like relief. It feels foreign. Here is what I want you to know, and I want you to hear this clearly. Psychology does not look at what you became and call it damage. It looks at what you became and says, this nervous system adapted to an extraordinary amount of pressure at an age when it should have been learning something else entirely. You learned responsibility before you learned safety. You learned strength before you learned softness. You learned how to take care of everyone else before anyone taught you how to take care of yourself. And now, Maybe for the first time, you are allowed to put some of that down. Not all of it at once. Not immediately, but slowly. In the way that something carried for a very long time gets set down. Carefully with both hands, with the quiet recognition that you do not have to pick it up again. Healing does not mean becoming weak. It means learning that you were always allowed to rest. That needing something does not make you a burden. That the strength you built to survive is real. And it will still be there even when you are not using it to hold everything together. You did not grow up too fast because something was wrong with you. You grew up too fast because you were paying attention and because you loved people who needed more than they could give back. That is not a flaw. That is one of the most quietly remarkable things about you. In the comments, tell me one thing you wish someone had done for you when you were caring more than a child ever should. Just one thing. That is enough. And if you want more psychology that sees you fully, subscribe to Psychology Unpacked. Understanding yourself starts here.